If you want to run faster, then keep on watching, because in this video, I'm going to show you 6 exercises that are scientifically proven to make you faster in just a few weeks. I'm going to show you each exercise, the benefits, the science behind it, and how to do it down to the weights, sets, and reps. Let's get into it. The jump squat has been shown to improve sprint times by multiple studies, including this one with 60 subjects, which found that 8 weeks of jump squats significantly improved 50-meter sprint times. For the first 4 weeks, they did 8 sets with 4 reps. For the last 4 weeks, they did 4 sets with 8 reps. 3 minutes rest in between each set in every single session. They did this for a total of 3 times per week for 8 weeks. And the question is, should you train light weights at a high speed or heavy weights at a slower speed? This study put it to the test in order to see the difference in sprint times. For 8 weeks, they had group 1 use 30% of their body weight, then they had group 2 use 80% of their body weight. They found that the group that used 80% ran significantly slower, meanwhile group 1 who used 30% ran significantly faster. To make this even better, I like performing these barefoot, and I recommend a moderately soft surface if you're starting to implement them. Because if you wear sneakers, your body has a hard time getting a feel for the ground, tends to land harder, and there's a lot more impact placed on your joints. On the other hand, doing these barefoot, I found it easier to engage my foot muscles, calves, and land softly. This way, we're strengthening our feet and improving the power in the legs at the same time. Research shows that elastic resistance-based hip flexor strength training improves sprint times, specifically in the 10 and 40-yard sprints, which is equivalent to 9 and about 36 meters. The subjects trained 3 times per week for a total of 8 weeks. Each training session consisted of 1 hip flexor exercise with elastic resistance for 3 sets of 10 reps with 75% of their 1 rep max, with the final set performed to failure. In this case, we're training the hip flexors to fire powerfully from a static position. I see this transferring over the best to the sprint start. And if you don't have an elastic band, here's what you can do instead. Nearly every gym has one of these cable machines, so you can use this attachment and get into this position. Not only is it shown to improve sprint times, but it's also a killer ab workout. If you've learned anything new so far, make sure you hit the like button for me. Literature suggests that exercises that strongly activate the glutes and hamstring muscles, such as the Romanian deadlifts, transfer over to maximum speed sprinting. Because research shows that eccentric training causes greater improvements in sprinting ability than concentric training, if we combine these 2 concepts, it makes logical sense to perform eccentric Romanian deadlifts. In the second study I mentioned, eccentric training was performed twice a week for 6 weeks using 10 reps. The first week consisted of 1 set, and an additional set was added each week for a total of 6 sets by week 6. Not only can these transfer over better to sprinting than traditional deadlifts, but due to the nature of the movement, you don't need as much weight, so there's less stress on your lower back. To make this even better, you can do these with a single leg if we have the appropriate balance. The problem with these though is that it's very easy to do them wrong because it's a very high coordination movement. To solve this, we can use a foam roller to ensure correct posture through the hips and use a kettlebell to make sure we're going down low enough. This study used 50 high school athletes to test the effectiveness of unresisted and resisted sled pushing over the course of 8 weeks. They found significant improvements in 5 to 20 meter sprint times in the group that performed sled pushes and no improvements in the group that did unresisted sprint training. I found in my experience that pushing a sled does 2 things that are very effective to sprinting. 1, it makes it easy to get in the correct posture for acceleration and get very low, which is quite difficult to do without pushing a sled. The only guys I've seen who are able to get down low on the start are elite sprinters like Asafa Powell. 2, it teaches you exactly how it feels to drive the leg back into the ground behind your center of gravity without worrying about falling on your face, which is also hard to do because normally this requires you to have correct posture in the first place, along with a great deal of explosive power. In the study, subjects had 2 sled pushing training sessions every week for 8 weeks with light, moderate, and heavy loads. Each group saw significant improvements, especially over the first 5 meters. The group that had the most improved sprint times was the one that used heavy loads. By the way, if you guys are unsure on how to do any of these exercises, I'll be posting on TikTok how to do them, as well as variations for each one. There's some controversy in the community as to whether or not these transfer over to sprinting. Well, a meta-analysis reviewed 6 studies that tested the impact of hip thrust on sprint performance. They found that 4 out of 6 studies reported a significant improvement in sprint times. Here's the key factor that is likely the root of all the confusion. The 2 studies who failed to see any results used heavier weights, which leads us to the conclusion that lighter weights moved at higher velocities are ideal for improving sprint times with the hip thrust. In these studies, the benefits were seen in subjects after training for just 8 weeks or even less in some cases. Here's exactly what they did in one of the studies that successfully improved sprint times. They did 4 sets each week and worked their way down from a 12 rep max to a 6 rep max. There's not significant research on this, but I found to make these better, I like taking things a step further and doing single leg hip thrust as well. At the end of the day, sprinting is a single leg movement, so it makes sense to also target each leg individually. As some of you guys know, I interviewed an Olympian a while back, Matthias Bühler, who is a 2-time Olympian, 8 times national champion, and trained at the same camp as Andre De Grasse. He's been helping me out with training, and he's also recommended to me the single leg hip thrust. During the swing phase of the sprint, the hamstrings have to work extremely hard as 2 important things happen. 1, as hip flexion occurs, it must contract to bend the leg. 2, as leg extension occurs, the hamstring must lengthen under high amounts of force. Having weak hamstrings that can't handle high amounts of force in this manner is one of the reasons behind hamstring injuries. In order to prevent that, we must train the hamstrings to be very strong as they lengthen, otherwise known as eccentric strength. The Nordic curls have been shown in multiple studies, including this meta-analysis, as a highly effective exercise for preventing hamstring injuries. Studies also show that Nordic curls significantly improve sprint performance in 10-meter sprint times after just 10 weeks of training. Here's how they implemented this exercise. Over the course of 10 weeks, they increased the training frequency from once a week all the way up to 3 times per week. They performed 2 to 3 sets with 5 to 12 reps, gradually increasing the volume over time. This is the hardest hamstring exercise I've ever personally done. I've only seen 2 people who can go all the way down to the ground and come back up. Denise Togai and Tyreek Hill, one of the fastest players in the NFL. I'll be honest with you guys, the other week I actually felt something in my hamstring. I thought I almost pulled it. Fortunately, I didn't, but now I'm doubling down on this along with a few other eccentric hamstring exercises. To make this even better, we can use a medicine ball, so rather than dropping to the ground once our body is exhausted, we can use it to get more time under tension and get further down to the ground. Again, if you learned anything new so far in this video, make sure you hit the like button for me. As effective as these exercises are, they're not gonna help us run faster unless we have a scientific approach to warming up before sprinting. You can click here right now to watch this video and it'll show you exactly how to do that.